What's happening, my movie lovers and bud smokers, and welcome to another episode of 5 on It, a show where we do two things. We smoke doobies and we review movies. We are your hosts. I am Francisco. He is Sir Frazier. And on today's episode, we are reviewing a 1990 cult classic. We are talking Event Horizon. But before we dive into that, Sir Frazier, what are you powering through those lungs of yours, my man?
We are hitting Toking Blunt. So this is a sativa. This is OG and Neville's Wreck. So it's a ghost train haze. That's what those two blend together.
We got to see some ghosts on the train.
Very fitting, given we are going to be talking about the sci-fi horror.
Real quick, I don't want to interrupt you real quick, but to talk about a little bit of the doobie section of the show real quick.
Do tell.
We also don't always have to. We always are smoking, whether it's a doobie, a little joint, or our oil pens. Mm-hmm. But we should also partake in, maybe even before the show, maybe pop an edible or drink a little drink. And then by the time we hit record, then we're feeling real nice and loose.
Definitely.
That's just an idea, because I have had some of the drinks. The edibles are cool, depending on you got to be careful, because you don't want to eat anything too high in the milligram section, because you might get gone.
Yeah, for real. No joke about that. Those edibles, they have a way of creeping up on you. One minute you're thinking, these edibles ain't shit. Next thing you know, you're taking a nap.
Bro, I took I usually deal with 50 milligrams, and I did 100 milligrams when I was in Vegas on my plane ride. My plane ride back home. Because I was like, I'm not throwing this shit away. I'm like, fuck that. I'm just going to take this 50 right now.
Don't waste no edibles around here. My man popped the edible like he was doing a flight from here to Tokyo.
Like, what? I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? But I took 50, and then I took another 50 right before I went into the airport. And on the plane ride, I KO'd for the whole
I'm
ride.
Not surprised. Was it a sativa or indica?
I usually do indica, so it's probably some sort of indica, I bet. But
Mr. Sandman.
But anyway, let's talk of Event Horizon.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So, well, just a quick summary of the movie. And FYI, if you don't know, now you know. There will be spoilers and a little bit of profanity. Yes, but so the summary of this movie. So a rescue ship is sent, receiving a distress signal from the spaceship Event Horizon, a ship that disappeared 7 years ago. The rescue crew learns that evil forces haunt the ship, tormenting them with visions from their past. So that's just kind of like a little bit of the gist of it. One thing... just a couple things to kind of point out. The background, the production of this movie is really fascinating. I think it's going to shape my score. Well, I don't think it definitely will shape my score. I'm curious if some of these things resonate with you, Cisco. But this movie is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. For those that don't know, he is responsible for Mortal Kombat.
Classic.
And the Resident Evil franchise. Something that I didn't know about him. So he was actually approached to direct X-Men, the original X-Men, and as well as, not surprisingly, the Mortal Kombat 2, Annihilation, because the first one was so successful. But yeah, this movie stars Laurence Fishburne and Sam Neill. I guess one thing that I guess we can kind of dive into just some of the aspects of this movie. So the original script involved aliens, but it was revised to essentially be a haunted house in outer space. And I think that really fits it, because he talks about movies like The Shining, The Haunting, as well as, Alien being very influential. And, this, when you think about it, this is kind of like The Shining, but aboard a spaceship instead of the haunted Overlook Hotel. And it was also really fascinating, listening to some of the Q&A, with Anderson, because he talks about how, in a lot of ways, there's this Gothic element, both in terms of the representation of hell, but even the actual design of the Event Horizon itself. Mm-hmm. He talks about how he spent time at Notre Dame Cathedral, and essentially, when they were designing this, it was bits and pieces of the Notre Dame. That's how they kind of laid it out. Mm-hmm. The towers actually are part of the end of the ship, where the actual gravity drive is.
Yeah, I heard when I was just looking up the background on the movie. I saw like a fun fact that said like the Notre Dame was actually in like the movie like at some point in it. So I didn't notice it when I first watched it, but when I saw like that note, I was like, that's a quick little nice little trivia question.
No, it definitely was. Like thinking about this movie, it kind of feels like a mixture of a few movies: Hellraiser, Alien, and I would say The Shining.
Yeah, well, because the Shining, just with like the ship,
the haunted aspect,
and like, it went to a dimension that was supposedly lead you to hell. They don't explicitly kind of say that, but that's what they're pretty much implying. And by the end of it, when you see Sam Neill's character and Laurence Fishburne have like a face off, you get a scene into that. So I could see the Shining. And what else did you say?
So The Shining, Hellraiser, and Alien.
Hellraiser, yeah, dude. One thing I will say with this movie is like the costume, the makeup is really well done. It still holds up. This movie came out in 1997.
The set design too is also really impressive about this movie.
Yeah, like they kept everything. I mean, because since it is like a 90s movie, the effects aren't going to be like outstandingly great when you get to the outer space section. So they do a good job of like keeping everything on the ship where you could keep things practical. And everything looks like very well done as far as like the set design. Wouldn't be the last time Laurence Fishburne would find himself on a ship like that. I definitely was getting Matrix vibes just seeing him on a ship.
Yeah, I was going to say with this movie, I thought that the shots of the ship when they first come up on the ship, the Event Horizon, when Lewis and Clark is the ship that's is responding to the distress call, very alien-like, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I say Alien, but also the hellish aspect definitely reminds me of Hellraiser. And I would say just like the atmospherics of it definitely reminded me of Alien.
Yeah.
Because I think something that's really effectively done with this movie, and I think Alien as well, compared to say the Overlook Hotel, is you feel very claustrophobic in the ship, even though it's a huge ship, right? But I think there's scenes that really help you feel very claustrophobic in a way that Shining, the Overlook Hotel didn't, which is ironic, right? Because these spaceships are much larger than the hotel.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's like the angles that they show you. Right. I think that's what kind of lends to that very as I said, claustrophobic vibe.
And it's kind of funny too, like the Lewis and Clark ship, especially when you see it compared to the Event Horizon. Like, goddamn, the Event Horizon was fucking huge compared to the other ship. And it's like thinking like if you're on that, you're like, damn, this fucking thing is humongous. But
I'm definitely gonna get my steps in.
Yeah, literally. Well, they get plenty of steps in running around that motherfucker trying to get out.
For real.
One thing though that I was like gonna say about like with the aspect though is because like it starts off like you said, like it's more of just like science fiction. It feels very alien like, and so when you talk about like the original script was gonna have aliens into it, I almost think like. I mean, because the film itself was not successful when it was released. It developed a cult following once, like, fans get a hold of it and everything like that. But I almost think, like, would that have been a better movie? Because it almost, like, once you start, like, it does feel, like, spooky on this ship, like, what's going on? But then when you start bringing into like, hell and like that other dimension, it almost like maybe they just don't do a good enough job of like bridging those two worlds together. But it almost, they lose a little bit in the story department once like you start going more into like the hell like type of world. When you start getting like all the hallucinations and everything, it's like, why? Obviously, because it's hell, I guess that's why they're targeting. Like, why is she seeing her son? Why is he seeing his wife, his ex-wife, or Sam Neill's character is seeing his ex-wife, having hallucinations about that?
Yeah,
which you already knew from the get-go. His character was fucking weird because the first scene you see is like it looks like the aftermath of the Event Horizon, and then you see this character dude that looks all with very Hellraiser-like, floating one of his figures, and then you're just like, what the fuck?
Well, what's cool about that shot, though, too, and this speaks to the cinematography, is that the way that the actual windows of the Event Horizon form a cross as you see this man who's been tortured floating. I thought that was really interesting. Something that I'd read about. So when when Anderson Paul Anderson was approaching this project, they kind of entertained the idea of doing something along the lines of what Apollo 13 did, which was reduced gravity aircraft to try to get as realistic depiction of what it would be like in outer space. That, like, they had to throw that out the window pretty quickly just because of how the toll it was taking on the actors, on top of just the heaviness of those suits.
Yeah.
Like, that was like, it was pretty grueling set.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, because
yeah.
I mean, the suits do look really good even now. Like, this is the first time I've seen this movie, and we already said, like, this is definitely an older movie. It was like almost 30 years old. It definitely looks like you're carrying around a lot of weight. So filming this movie, it was probably no easy task.
Well, so I guess, like, just to kind of set the stage, so they do get this distress signal that Neill's character, Weird, which you used the word earlier, motherfucker's a weirdo. I mean, this dude, he went off the reservation very quickly. It's almost like a Frankenstein-y kind of relationship, because this is his own creation, kind of leads to his demise in some ways. But they get this distress signal. And off the rip, we're pretty much introduced to Weir as somebody who's dealing with loss and guilt and is tormented by his wife's suicide. And I think there's a common thread between him as well as Laurence Fishburne's character, Captain Miller, because, you know, he also is haunted by his past in terms of, like, his someone on his crew that he was unable to save. He abandoned him in order to save everyone else to a pretty brutal death. But so we fast forward, right? Weir's on the ship meeting the crew, and he plays that horrible recording, which was this distress signal.
That's pretty much once, like, everything kind of starts getting going. Like, you just meet all the crew at first. You're seeing everybody. What's his name? The actor that plays Cooper, Richard T. Jones.
Oh, yeah, he does his thing.
You should know him from The Wood. He has a few funny moments. A few of the lines that he has is when Laurence Fishburne gets scared when he's on the event horizon and that body comes, or no, the glove comes around his face, and he's like, shit. And then he's like, whoa, looks like Captain's got a case of the willies. that shit got me for some reason. And then his interaction with the female when he was like talking about a coffee. You want something hot and black inside you, baby?
She's like, no, how about some coffee?
Just the way he delivers those lines, and dude, I just like that actor. He's really good.
He definitely brings some, like, levity and, like, some comic relief at times.
Yeah,
for sure.
That was definitely his role of the movie. Yeah. But once that stress signal comes, that's when things get rolling. And honestly, I even wrote down, like, dude, I mean, granted, when you hear distress signal, it's probably not going to be good, I guess.
Yeah, definitely not.
But my God, that signal, you hear that, and it's like, are we sure we really want to go and check this shit out?
The TDRS did receive this single transmission.
Say, get the fuck out of here!
Then you hear where it sounds like Latin, and then the other dude, he
incorrectly translates
it to, like, what's a liberate me or save me. And like I said, honestly, like, yeah, you have to do your job. That's what you're there for. And even Laurence Fishburne makes that known, saying, like, actually, doctor, we've all got pulled off of they were all pretty much on vacation or on leave, and they all have to do this emergency mission. So they're all looking at this doctor for guidance almost on this way.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's his ship. He knows it well. He's clearly incapable of being objective when it comes to this ship. We see that very early on, where he insists to Miller on being let on as, you know, they're about to board the ship and, you know, see what the hell's going on. And also, like, a very interesting lead up to that is when they're doing life scans of the ship, there's readings all over the place.
Yeah.
Which is also immediately kind of like,
Yeah.
Red flag.
Like, there's life readings, but nothing's showing. You don't see
anybody.
I'm not seeing nobody.
And then you step on to the actual ship and you see there's no gravity right now happening. You know what I'm saying? And so it's also, I mean, he says it, you know, this place is a tomb, you know, and I think that tunnel, man, that immediately you have this really eerie feeling about this. I think that's one of the things that this movie succeeds the best at, was just really building the atmosphere, whether it's, the kind of claustrophobic aspect, or even like when they actually go into the main deck and you see like this blood caking like the interiors of like
it's almost like the tubes or whatever like they use for
almost like pillars, like
yeah,
it was just caked in like blood, and it was just like really horrific. You just clearly you can clearly realize something horrible happened here. But yeah, I think that's where it strives at doing very, very successfully.
And honestly, wasn't they like Laurence Fishburne makes it known like their mission is pretty much rescue any survivors, salvage anything on the ship? Was that
yes? Rescue survivors and salvage anything on the ship. That's
honestly, as soon as I see that type of scene, like I walk in and I'm seeing like there's nothing going on. You're seeing blood fucking everywhere. This ship has been missing for 7 years. This mission just turned from rescuing survivors to we're just salvaging everything on this ship. And if we come across people, then we're either going to neutralize them or we're going to take them with us. But at that point, it's like, yo, we got to start wrapping this shit up, because who do you think is just? Do you think somebody's just chilling down here waiting for like? No, they're like, fuck that. No. To me, the whole mission would have changed as soon as I would have stepped aboard a Horizon, and I'm seeing all that weird shit happening.
Yeah, definitely. And so before they even get on the ship, right? Weirs explains to them what the ship was designed for, and he talks to them about the experimental gravity drive, which allows them to create a black hole through which like the ship can travel from one location across time and space to another. And this gravity drive, once the crew from Lewis and Clark gets on, as they're just kind of taking stock of what's happened, where the crew is, one of the main characters, Justin, is pulled into the black hole of the gravity drive. Can we just talk about too how eerie that was, like walking there, like the razor teeth on the door?
Yeah, that's why I was like the meat grinder. That's what like even Justin said. He's like, oh, it looks like a meat grinder.
Yeah, I'm
like, I don't know what they use to create that, whether it's actual some sort of practical effect and enhanced, or if that was complete computer animation. I don't know what it was, but that should look dope. Yeah. I will tip the hat. That shit looked awesome.
That entire room looked dope.
Yeah, like that whole that tunnel, like how it led, like that was the bridge that led to the two rooms and everything. So the whole set looked awesome. It looked really good. But my God, granted, I guess you kind of say like without some of this stuff, there wouldn't be a movie. But maybe you should just do more clever writing, because I just don't like dumb characters. And Justin was just a dumbass character in that moment. You literally, you see some weird goo. You're on a ship where there's blood everywhere.
Well, he hasn't seen that yet, to be fair.
Okay, I'll give him that. But you're on a ship that's been missing. You don't know what's going on.
Right.
You see some weird liquid shit, and then you stick your goddamn finger in like a moron. Then you pull it out, and then you decide to, I'm going to stick my whole hand in it now. And then you end up getting sucked in. It's like, oh my, like maybe they could have changed the scene with like, if he would have stuck his finger in, pulled it out, and then maybe something could have came out and grabbed him, or like the liquid could have came and just like
engulfed him,
Yeah. Because it's like, why the fuck would you do that?
What is it?
I don't know. The life scan just went off the scale.
Something's wrong stuff. Put him out. Put him out.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's just me, but it's like I just fucking hate that shit like that.
I hear you on that. What's very interesting though too. What I'd say is that that kind of recalls like the nickname that he has, right? Baby Bear.
Baby Bear.
And because in the story, right, isn't the baby bear a little bit more reckless? He ends up kind of, jeopardizing himself. And I think this is an example of Justin, right? He's also one of the younger of the crew. But yeah, he is pulled into the gravity drive, and he is spit out of essentially like the drive, and he is just he's like catatonic. I mean, he's just like his
lights are on,
his lights are on, eyes open, but
not even blinking.
No one's there. Exactly. So that becomes like, and as he's pulled into and pushed out of the gravity drive, that sends the shockwave that damages Lewis and Clark. So now they're basically, we all have to board the ship until we can till we can fix the maintenance issues.
Honestly, when
there's a huge crack in the
I was like,
wing.
when you see the fucking damage on the ship, like I said, they do a good job of hiding, like being out outer space and everything, because they don't show it too much. And what they do show, it doesn't look too bad. But when you see the gash on the ship, you're like, yeah. And then they only have about 22 hours total. Like once they actually once they actually set the clock, I think I want to say it's like 22 hours or 20 hours, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a fucking engineer. I don't know how to like build or fix shit like that. I'm not a mechanic or engineer or anything like that. But you might gonna need a little bit more than 20 hours to fix that gash. But that shit look
double time. Right?
That shit look bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty.
But then honestly, too, like
scene. At
this point, like that's when also like Cooper like goes and is this at the point where he saves Justin?
Yeah, he pulls Justin. No, that's later. That's after they've all been on the ship and everyone starts having their own visions or hallucinations while they're on the ship. I remember Peters sees her son. She's another person, right? We talked earlier in the conversation. We mentioned like how some of the main characters who die, right, are battling with their own sense of guilt, something that they need to atone for, right? Mm-hmm. And with Peters, we realized that, okay, she wasn't able to take the leave because they got the distress signal. So she wasn't able to be back on Earth with her son who has some kind of ailment. And so she's like haunted by those visions of him. And like she sees him on one of the medical tables and his legs are just scarred up, like they're like something's eating them.
Looked disgusting.
Yeah, it was pretty gnarly, dude. Like these huge lesions on his legs.
So once again, a nod to the makeup department on that one.
Man, facts. The makeup, and to your point, like the makeup team did a really good job.
Even like when like you see Sam Neill towards the end and he has his eyes gouged out, you're just like. Yeah, that was cool. Like when, like I said, he looks like a fucking Hellraiser character at the end when he's just pretty much butt naked and he's got lacerations all over his body and he's just like, I'll show you. But it's like, man, put some fucking pants on.
Step away.
But Peter, she's having hallucinations about her son. Sam Neill's character, Weir, he's having hallucinations about his ex-wife that committed suicide. Then Laurence Fishburne, Miller, he mentions to another crew member about like the losing the other crew member on one of his other missions. That's why he's got all the guilt.
He was burned alive.
Yeah, and he's even said like he's never mentioned that to anybody. He's never talked to anybody, but somehow like the ship knows. And so like it definitely like lures you in with like the curiosity of just kind of what the fuck is going on.
Yeah,
like, why is everybody seeing all these things and everything like that?
And all the while, so there's some video footage that's on a CD. Remember, it's on the CD. Like he remember when they first explored the ship.
Was that DVD that?
Yeah. He and Weir is just telling them where to go and get the logs, and she like ejects it, like the CD comes out.
Yeah. But you couldn't even get the goddamn CD out.
Yeah, it should take a little bit of time. But they're basically trying to, they have this scrambled version of the recording from, what happened to the crew and the source of the distress signal. And they're trying to essentially unscramble that so they can understand like what the hell is going on. So all this is happening. And we also get they're able to actually, they end up getting the video, right? Mm-hmm. And they see just horrible, like torture, an orgy, cannibalism. Like there's just so much crazy things happening.
Because I was just like, I kept thinking of the audio, and I'm just like the video, and then now that you mentioned, I'm like, oh my god, that's when like you see like the person like with their hand in like the mouth or whatever like that. Oh my god!
And then the captain holding his eyes.
Yeah.
And he's saying essentially what the real translation wasn't save me, but it's save yourself from hell.
Yeah.
And so that's when DJ ends up translating that. And dude, after they see that video, Miller's like, pack up, we're leaving.
Exactly. That's what I was like.
I said, post haste. Get him out of here.
Then at that point,
Weir's like, we can't go. I'm like, What?
I know, like you kind of, like I said, you already kind of know something's kind of weird with him because even when Cooper saves, what's his name? The baby bear?
Justin?
Yeah. And he comes back and he's like kind of hysterical and he's just like, I saw all this like weird shit. And obviously Miller, he knows he saw something, but he just doesn't want to believe. Like, it just sounds very, very odd of what he saw. It just sounds plausible. But Weir is just so quick to just kind of like brush it off as like, he's just kind of like seeing things or whatever. And so from the get-go, I'm not sure if the listeners heard that, but there was a loud bang in the background. We'll have to check that out later. But you just know something's going on with this character, and he just gets progressively weirder and weirder and weirder.
And more insane.
And then by the time they see that video, and Captain Miller wants to just say, let's wrap it up, pack it up, and we're going home. And then that's when you see Sam Neill go, we are already home, or I'm already home. And then he just kind of fades into the back.
Dark, yeah.
Oh, shit. But the question I have about this, it's kind of leading into like one of the like the negatives I have is like, was he always like this from the get-go? Did he get, because like obviously when when they're all packing up, they're getting the fuck out, she has one last hallucination of her son, which I'm like, you already know this is playing with your mind, but you're still going to go and chase this ghost. So she goes and chases the hallucination. She ends up falling to her death, which the death was fucking
brutal.
Brutal.
It was really just, man.
But then Weir, Sam Neill's character, he comes over, he sees Peters, and he's kind of distraught and is like, no, but then he starts digging his fucking eyeballs out. So it's like, did he get possessed at that moment? Was he always fucking weird? Because like I said, he already had the dream.
Yeah,
towards the beginning of the movie.
I think the dream
or the hallucination, what do you want to call it?
I think, yeah, that was interesting too. Yeah, because that did happen very early on when they were essentially like, not cryo sleep. What would you call that? They were basically
cryostasis.
Yeah, they were sleeping, you know, because of just the journey to get from Earth to Neptune. But yeah, I don't know that I think that he was always. I feel like that was the ship sending him that signal. That was like the ship communicating almost with him. But I think that I think that he's somebody who doesn't start off with as the villain. I think he becomes the villain as he like loses his grip on reality.
Yeah.
And he's not, and I think like the ship essentially kind of like uses him as like a host.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of interpreted that. And the fact that he was his own, he was also the creator of the ship.
Well, like when you think of like possession movies, you think that the spirit will usually possesses like the weakest person in the bunch. Like the weakest mind, the person that maybe that's an addict or something like that. Somebody that could be easily taken over. And if he's already distraught over his wife's like suicide, and he built the ship, so he already has like a very like incentive to get on the ship, stay on the ship, see where it's been and all that, where it's going and all that stuff. That is his baby. And maybe like obviously like the hell is an afterlife, and if maybe they don't explicitly say like his whole like religious background or anything like that, but with the whole like portal being like to hell, maybe he thinks that's a way. It's kind of like a bad way to maybe try to get in touch with your wife in some sort of weird way.
Yeah,
like I said, because obviously he's trying to. It went to a dimension nobody knew where it fucking went, but he just seems like obviously if the spirit was using him as a host, he was like the weakest one of the bunch because he'd be more willing to stay out there more than the others.
Well, I think that
his wife's already dead. That's his ship.
Yeah, I think he was uniquely compromised, and I think that's probably what made him the candidate to use as the host. Because I think like he was already like psychologically frail, it seemed, just because of his wife, and then obviously like there's just like the history he had with creating the ship itself. And, a level of investment in that. But yeah, it was.
Maybe the spirit was giving everybody hallucinations to like see which one they wanted to like really fully take over some weird way like that.
Yeah. And it was really interesting. I mean, I know the kind of, what were you gonna say?
I was saying, it did just the hallucinations and everything. It's like, it makes you feel kind of eerie, creepy and stuff like that, but you just they don't explicitly tell you kind of why, what's going on. As far as like why are these people like getting these hallucinations? Are they being targeted in some way? I don't know. It just they just don't quite stick the landing for me as far as like the story wise of like once you start bringing in the whole dimension to hell.
Well, you know what? I think there's something to be said for, like, I kind of touched on this earlier, but I think there's something to be said for the fact that this kind of hell and torment is being visited on 3 specific characters who are navigating their own internal, like, guilt and their own personal hell, right? Because of things that happened in their past.
Yeah.
And so that, like, I think that in some ways maybe there's some significance in that, because they are the 3 who are singled out. We don't really know much about the other characters' backgrounds, which is actually something I think is a negative for me in this movie.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about the crew outside of, you know, I mean, this is a very I think this movie over relies on the atmosphere, the atmosphere that it creates, and also just the cinematography, which I think is really dope, and even the set design. I think for a movie that I think they had to shoot this in less than a year, like around 10 months, and given how short their post-production editing was, for them to build this set, and I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
They had some significant hurdles that we can talk about, or we'll talk about soon. But I think that I do have definitely appreciation for those things about this movie.
I was gonna say maybe I was kind of thinking like maybe why like that whole possession or the dimension to hell like why it didn't work for me, and I mean I can't think of like any sort of like that those type of movies that explicitly work for me. Like they're like those type of movies like really are not in my rotation usually. But I do know like when I do watch those movies, a lot of the times when they always go grab like some sort of expert and they go into some like background. They're like, this type of demon was like, they do background on the presence that's in the house or that possessing the person. And sometimes like in those movies that could be like a really good scene because like you're really talking about like some dark shit and like you could really set the mood with the score and everything. And it's like a lot of times those are really big moments in possession movies for me. And maybe that's like something that's missing from this movie because nobody knows what's going on. It's just some dimension to hell. But like you don't know what type of spirit, what type of entity is possessing the crew or is possessing Sam Neill at the end. Like I said, like was he all like this way the whole time? Did he get this way like on when he just got on the ship?
I think it was the ship largely. I think that the ship was like preying on their fears as well as like their guilt. I think that's why it was able to. That's why I think it targeted the people that it did.
But then like how did the ship even come back from like if it was gone for 7 years, did somebody send it back?
Yeah, that's the mystery, right?
That's why I'm saying like maybe I'm missing that whole aspect of it was like of a specific demon but then it's like what did a demon hijack this plane and learn how to fly this fucking thing? I don't know. There's something kind of missing. That's why when you mentioned like the whole alien, I didn't know that about the aliens was originally the plan. And I'm like, man, maybe aliens would have worked. But maybe then they would have thought that would just be an aliens ripoff. But
yeah, I think
I don't know. You could there's 1,000 aliens. You can the way you write it could be different.
Yeah, I think that's true. But I also like I definitely appreciate the effort because I think that there's something like I like the concept of. And we touched on this earlier. I like the concept of a haunted house but in space because I mean, Aliens was Jaws but in space. Truthfully, like you know what I'm saying. So like I appreciate the concept. I think like. It just at times it under delivered. Like there's that really intriguing scene where there's like this thing that's banging on the door and you can see like the indents. And I was like, okay, what the hell is this? Like, what was that? Like, but you never get any more details about like what the hell that was, what was causing that. Because clearly like it's not just hallucinatory because Miller's character talks about like, no, I felt the flames. I could felt the heat from the flames. And so I think that like there were certain scenes like that it felt half-baked.
Yeah.
I think is how I would phrase it.
I would give them credit because like the concept is like, because we're sitting here looking at a quote real quick from somebody who reviewed this movie on Rotten Tomatoes and calls it one of the greatest science fiction thrillers ever made. The premise, the performances, the backdrops were ahead of its time. And I'm like, I can't agree with one of the greatest science fiction thrillers ever made. I can't agree with that. But the premise is good. The backdrops are great. it just doesn't
Costume design was fire.
Performances are like, I mean, they don't do a terrible job or anything like that, but like, they don't really like, it's not a standout or anything like that for me. Like I said, like with whether it's Cooper, I always think of the Wood as the actor. Lawrence Fishburne, Event Horizon is not going to come up when I think of Lawrence Fishburne or Sam Neill. This doesn't take over Jurassic Park, no way in shape or form. But I don't know, like I said, with the premise is good, but it just doesn't quite stick the landing. No, you could have did maybe if they would have done a little bit more with the hell aspect of it. Because I don't know, they just I can't even think of it right now. It's just I really like the idea, but you could have like mixed this up a little bit more, especially with like, I mean, you do have some brutality with like the deaths and everything.
Yeah, definitely do. I mean, even like the scene up to, I think this is gonna be a highlight for me, but the scene where Justin is in he's in the lock, right? He's about to be ejected into outer space, that's a really dope scene, and he ends up there because he's almost possessed at this point, right? And once he hits the eject, the alarms kind of bring him out of this trance, and he is fearful. He realizes what the hell is going to happen. But like up to that point was really eerie because he talks about it showing him things like the gravity drive, the black hole, and he ends up getting ejected out of the airlock. And when you see him spinning up and like the side angle of that was outstanding. Stuck the landing. 10 out of 10. That was outstanding. And then Miller like literally coming after him and empowering to save him. Out of him as like he's like, actually you're seeing like what space is doing to human flesh unprotected, and it's like it's such a dope scene, dude. I love that's a highlight for me.
Justin, open the door! Miller, come in. Miller, come in. We have an emergency.
What's going on in there, Stark?
Justin's in the airlock.
Say again.
Justin is in the airlock and he is not wearing a suit.
I'm on it. As you were, sailor. Skipper, you need me on this. I need you right where you are.
Justin, open the door.
Did you hear it?
Keep him talking. Yes. Yes, I heard it. Do you know what it is?
It shows you things. Horrible things.
What does?
The dark inside me from the other place. I won't go back there. I won't.
No, baby bear. Come on, open the door.
What's happening?
I don't think she can talk him down.
He's better. He opens the airlock, he's going to turn inside out.
No.
Stop.
Nod to the makeup, because when he looks down and he's like, it's happening, and then you see his skin, it looks like it just got like airtight, like air sealed, and you see his veins and everything popping out, and then like once he actually comes out, bro, like I said, they do some good jobs, whether it's Justin doing that, or Peter's having that crazy fall, or Sam Neill with him at the end and everything like that. It's like, damn, they kill it in the makeup department. But maybe they could have, maybe if the ship would have ended up in hell and they had to escape that dimension, maybe that could have been an area they could have taken it to.
Well, this is the thing. Like, this is the thing about this movie, man, and the ending. I'm almost thinking, do we want to cover what gets up to that point? So one of the things about this shit that we got to talk about is how in the tunnel or the corridor that connects the compartment with the gravity drive to, I guess, the head of the ship, it's lined with explosives in case, and it was created that way in case they needed to sever, the ship. And the front of the ship could be used as like a safety raft, basically. So now that he's gouged his eye out, is basically on a mission to like
he's full
recruit a new crew for the Event Horizon.
He's full possessed out, man. He's gone off the deep end.
He blows up the Lewis and Clark, killing one of the crewmen and doing that. And
that's a good scene. I will give him that because when Miller calls and he's like, "Get off the ship."
Smith, get out of there.
Come again, sir?
One of the explosives is missing from the corridor. Weir might have put it on the Clark.
No way. No, sir. No way. I've just put it back together, sir.
Get off the Clark now, Smith.
And then you see Weir just taking. I'm glad they didn't do something corny. I'm glad they just showed the back.
Him lowering that shit was
I'm glad they didn't do nothing corny with him like facing him and then like waving at. I'm glad they didn't do nothing cornball shit like that. It's because it is like an eerie just scene because he's like, where? And you just see the back of his head just getting lower down. It's like, oh, this motherfucker. And then you see the panic in, is it Smitty? What is that what they called him?
Yeah, he's
I think it was
pilot. Yeah.
I think it was Smitty. And he's just searching for that fucking bomb, just searching. And by the time he finds it, it's too late. I was like,
Sweaty? Like you see like a still of that. There's actually a disarm button to the right. Yo, you could have made it.
It was something I was rooting for. I'm glad at least one of my dudes made it. I was
Cooper?
like Cooper and Smitty. I wanted them to live.
Because both of them, their gut was going off. They were like, "Yo, this ship is fucked."
Even Smitty from the get go.
He's like, I'm not sleeping on that.
This is not good at all. And when I see characters like that, I'm like, please, I hope they fucking live. I hope at least one of them lives. And one of them does. Coop does live.
Yeah, when he proposed his way back, he's like, "Why the hell did this have to happen to me?" His comic relief is just great because, like I said, it kind of breaks up this really dark movie. Otherwise,
well, honestly, like it is labeled as a dark comedy drama. What is it? Was that it?
Oh, this is sci-fi.
No, I'm thinking of
Another Round.
We have another review coming out called Another Round. Look out for that. But
yeah, this is more just straight up sci-fi.
But with horror, I mean, I think you always need a little bit of like comic relief, just a little. I mean, it depends on like if you do it too much, then it definitely gets in like the dark comedy or black comedy, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But you can have a fucking horrifying movie and just a little splash of comedy here and there. It just depends on how well you use it, and they do a good job of like using the comedy in here and not letting it be overbearing to forget the brutality that is about to be shown.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think when Weir kills DJ by fucking cutting him open, that was horrific, dude.
Another nod, man, because you see his body just gaped open, bro, like just
by the hooks. Open. And his innards are just like on the ground. That's
another Hellraiser like
hell yeah
esque type of like a kill
for sure.
I never mind. I'm not even gonna get into it. But pretty much like they end up. You want to get into like the final scene with Sam Neill, and so like Laurence Fishburne and Sam Neill are having like the final face off.
After he was ejected in outer space, when he shot that, remember when he shot that, whatever that was, with the hook on it, he shot that
like a harpoon.
He shot that at Cooper as he's approaching the glass.
Yeah,
I was like, yo, you idiot! Like, why would you shoot that,
dude?
Not understand, like,
especially after they just talked. And he was like, "Well, if you
what makes you think I'll miss?
Yeah, if you miss, you'll do that. Then what make you think I'll miss?" And then you see Coop flying in like motherfuckers. Oh my God, him getting off of that the explosion, pretty much. That shit was fucking hilarious for me.
That scene was really well shot too.
Yeah,
it was very effectively,
Yeah, like you don't really like they do a good job of hiding everything and him spinning in outer space. Nothing looks like jarring. Like, whoa, this looks cool. The only time I thought about that was I'm like, did this movie get like a 3D release? Because there's aspects where, like, especially like when you're going on the ship and you see like little items floating, and you see Justin going in, and you see like the floating liquid or the
that didn't look as crisp,
and like it kind of like shoves it out the way. But there's a couple times when all that floating shit kind of comes at the screen, like you see a wrench or like a screw or something like that. And I'm like,
a water bottle as well. I remember that when they first board the ship.
Yeah, those are just like shots where it's like, okay, was this supposed to be released in 3D? Because you've done a lot of things where like a random item just comes floating towards the screen like that. And usually that's only done when you have a 3D movie. I just kind of like got like thoughts about that when I saw those.
Yeah.
Because that's the only time when I really thought like, ooh, that looks kind of video like PlayStation 2-ish. It didn't look too bad.
Yeah.
It just, I was like, ooh, that part doesn't quite.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. I mean, yeah, I know what you mean. I definitely had similar thoughts about that, like with the liquid when they first boarded Event Horizon, that didn't look as great. Jump into what we're talking about, where we have this confrontation with Weir and Miller in the gravity drive room, and he initially sees Weir as the soldier that had burned alive, that he had abandoned essentially, and then he transforms into Weir, and you see him. He definitely has this Pinhead type of vibe where he's naked but just covered in cuts. And, he tells them what he's going to do. He's going to take, where he's taking them to where, to hell. And that's, he had already pressed the gravity drive before he got sucked into outer space initially. And, Cooper goes to essentially try to shut this off and try to, sever the ship from, the main deck from that part of the ship.
But before that, doesn't have the iconic scene? Because this is where I even knew about Event Horizon, because like just being on YouTube and seeing like classic movie scenes and all this shit, you come across, you're like, Event Horizon, like hell scene, like some shit like that. And when they're having like their little interaction, he's pretty much gonna tell like Captain Miller, like,
let me show you. What the hell is even that?
And he just grabs him by the head, and you see it's only like 5 to 10 seconds, if that, maybe something like, give or take,
very effective,
a few seconds. But then you just see like everybody, and I'm sure other people that it's not even part of his crew, but you just see it's almost like the video that you saw, but even worse, you just see people just getting tortured and
barbed wire wrapped around them.
And then you get, it's very fast, like not glitches, but just
cuts.
Very fast cuts. But then you see a clear shot at the end where it's Justin, and he's like, "What, save me or help me," or some shit like that. And so it's like, okay, are they dead? Are they alive? I guess you can go to this dimension and bring them back from hell? That's like, I don't know, like that even brings up more questions, because it's like, okay, should he go and save these motherfuckers now? Like,
well, at this point, like that's the future that's awaiting them once they go through the black hole. Because Justin essentially has been sealed up and placed in those chambers, right? Because he's just in terrible shape. There's a really great scene, as the ship is fighting back. Because right after Miller says, we're gonna get far away from this and destroy the ship, you see like the blood fill like those chambers, and it burst, very much like a reference, I think, to The Shining, when the blood comes out of the elevator. Like you see the blood like flowing through like overhead. Like that was a really cool scene.
That was kind of surprising too, when like you always think of or hear about The Shining being like, that's like one of the most like blood heavy scenes, like the most blood ever used in one scene. And I'm like,
I could see that.
And I'm like, man, how come nobody's ever talked about Event Horizon? Or at least maybe I just wasn't into the know at that time. But I'm like, God damn, that was a fucking crazy scene with all that blood and shit. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that was shot practically. If all that was CGI blood, my God, those computer animators did a wonderful job. But it looks pretty damn practical to me, and I don't know what the fuck they use, but like the special effects, everything about it, like I said, whether it's the set, the costumes, makeup, all that shit, they pretty much knock it out of the park.
No, they definitely do. And one thing I definitely want to say about, just the score itself. So Anderson worked with the electronic dance duo Orbital. So they had partnered up previously on the Mortal Kombat soundtrack.
Still a classic soundtrack.
Yeah. And you can kind of hear a little bit of that, right, in the intro, especially in the open credits. Where they're kind of going like you're going through like a wormhole or a black hole or whatever that was. But for the movie though, Orbital collaborated with Michael Kamen, I think is how you pronounce his name, on the score. Dude, check out the heavy hitters that this man has been a part of. He did the scores for X-Men, Lethal Weapon series, Band of Brothers, just to name a few right there.
I was like, that's
damn.
That's 1, 2, and 3, and you're out. And like,
that's some big projects to be a part of.
You don't need to do any more after that.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just wanted to speak to the soundtrack. It was also funny talking, like, kind of listening to the soundtrack, because it does have like this kind of a little bit of electronic kind of techno aspect to it. And that's kind of the vibe. That was exactly the vibe that Anderson was going for, because he kind of saw this as kind of like a gothic kind of horror set in outer space, like with the technology and all that. But what were we about to say?
I mean, I just had another note too about like just kind of older movies, like especially like when you think of like Back to the Future and something that almost like came to fruition was like the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series. And think about old movies, especially when they go into the future, and it's thinking like, because I think I just threw down the dates. I didn't write down any of like the over notes that they had for it, but they used 2015, 2032, 2040, and 2047. And I'm just like, that ain't that far off. Oh. And it's like, it's just funny, like watching older movies. And then when they go into the future and it's like,
what they
we are pretty much in the times that they were saying.
Don't
like,
have anywhere near
we are not going to Neptune anytime soon.
No,
at least not that I know of. I'm not in NASA, obviously, but it's just like a little note that I made when I saw that. I'm just like, yeah, 2015, 2032, 2040, 47. Obviously we've already passed 2015, but 32, 40, and 47 are not that far off. It's just a funny note.
Well, you know, it's also interesting to think about, like, this movie came out in 97, and there's like obviously, like, hell is a huge part of this story. But, you know, thinking about, like, just what was happening around that time of year, like, a lot of people were convinced that the world was going to end in the year 2000. I mean, that was a thing. People were stocking up on... people thought Armageddon was coming, and so I wonder like how much of that kind of played into this kind of futuristic, like this kind of doom and gloom kind of futuristic kind of take where there's this like this just like hell, that's what's waiting, you know what I mean? Like when as we become more technologically advanced.
I guess when you think about like movies at that time, like when was Armageddon released?
Late 90s as well.
Late 90s too?
I want to say like 97?
I wonder if there was like a bunch of like world ending. I mean, great, we still get them, I suppose, but it's like, I wonder if there was just a bunch of world ending movies like around like the late 90s.
Well, you know, it's funny to say that.
Like Independence Day.
Well, I was going to say, because, you know, I had heard an article that said Arnold Schwarzenegger was considered for one of the lead roles. I think it might have been Miller. He was considered, but I think was it 98 or 99? He did that movie End of Days.
Yeah.
I mean, that was another, like, very much kind of in line with what we were just talking about. There's this kind of anxiety or fear about, you know, what the new millennium was going to bring. But yeah, I was thinking about that as you were talking about just the different years, you know, and thinking about, you know, I mean, The Matrix is another one, 99, right?
Yeah.
Was it 99, 98? 98, 99.
I want to say 99.
Another one, right? Very dystopian kind of outlook on what the future would bring.
And obviously that movie was written well before then, so it's like they had that idea in mind. One other thing, I'm sure people that are obviously know and love Event Horizon is that this movie is heavily edited down. There was an original 130-minute cut of the movie, but I guess it was, they say like on here that it was cut due to because of Titanic. And it's like, because it says the film had troubled production with filming and editing rushed by Paramount when it became clear that Titanic would not meet its projected release. The original 130-minute cut of the film was heavily edited by the studio's demand to Anderson's consternation.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of, like, I mean, going back to what we were saying about just the production history, because Titanic was originally slotted for the summer of 97, but just due to production going over, I think budget was another concern. They ended up getting pushed out of a summer release lineup. So Paramount, looking to find something to slot into that, you know, as a summer hit, they really leaned on Anderson to get everything done at a faster timeline. So instead of like, I think it was like 4 weeks for editing, post-production editing, they had to do it instead of 10, like I think it's kind of like a reasonable amount of time. They had to get that done in 4 weeks. And so I think that was a huge, because of that. And also another thing that really hurt this picture is the original was like flirting with, if not guaranteed, like an NC-17 rating because of just the gruesomeness and the violence. And the initial screenings were met with really poor reviews from the audience. People were like sick, disgusted.
Well, I heard that hell scene, like when he shows Laurence Fishburne, I heard that was a lot longer.
Yeah.
And maybe, honestly, maybe the 130-minute cut of the movie, maybe that would hit a little bit better for me. Who knows? Because I definitely know, at least in today's day, with the released a Snyder cut and director's cuts all over the place, the Batman v Superman director's cut hits a lot better for me than the original cut. So you never know. Maybe there's more context to the story, because obviously you're going from a 2-hour and 10-minute movie down to a, what is it, like a 130, hour 30, 90-minute movie, give or take.
Yeah, it's about 90-something minutes. Yeah.
There's a lot of meat that could potentially be on that bone.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of those great what if stories, because some of the sources I saw, I think Anderson has come out and said this, like, just because of how they kind of stored extra footage, like a lot of that was just lost.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But it is definitely one of those great, what ifs. Because I think, I guess maybe we can kind of, well, there's one thing actually I did want to say as far as like memorable lines. I shared a little bit. I shared one of my highlights, the scene where Cooper saves Justin. I'm sorry, when Miller saves Justin. That was like a really great scene where he's going in outer space. But one of my favorite lines in this was when I think one of the characters says, to Weir, he's like, you break all the laws of physics, and you seriously think there wouldn't be a price? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's that element, right, of trying to break the laws of nature and the consequences of that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I also like when they go into like the room and they see the core, and it's like, oh, well, what's inside? And they're like, oh, it's a black hole. And you're like, you created the most destructive thing in the universe. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it's just so hard for my little peanut brain, my high weed brain to wrap my mind around. It's like, how do you create a fucking black hole and like store it in like this damn core thing? Yeah. It's just like that's the type of science where it's like, whew, the breeze over my skull, man. You can feel it a mile away, man. That's the type of stuff when they start getting into the jargon. Yeah, I'm like, I can't really dictate where it's like, that sounds like some bullshit, because I don't fucking know. How the fuck am I supposed to know what type of scientific lingo?
Got me over here Googling.
I know. It's like, it sounds okay. Like, I don't know.
Well, I think that's also something that's really interesting, just thinking about the concept of the black hole as it relates to hell, because the black hole is something that light can't even, can't even get there. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing escapes it. Mm-hmm. It's virtually like, once you're there, like you're gone. Mm-hmm. But like, I thought that was like a kind of interesting kind of parallel, because like, just like that idea of like the black hole kind of representing like hell.
Yeah.
But
they use, it looks like Ben Horizon uses the black hole as a dimension to hell. Mm-hmm. Interstellar uses it as just like not timeline, time travel. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's another movie that uses some sort of black hole in like a different way, but because nobody knows where the fuck it goes.
True.
And that is a good shot at towards the end when the ship blows up, the Event Horizon blows up, and you see it pretty much get engulfed into
Neptune, into the black hole.
Yeah, into a black hole, and like the clouds and everything just kind of go, not clouds, but just it gets engulfed and everything. Yeah. It just kind of evaporates. Mm-hmm. It's just well shot. I'm like, that shit looks good.
It did look good.
Really good. For 1997, that looks really good.
I think for me, like, one of the things, and maybe we can start kind of like pivoting towards, the our scores. Yeah. But I think that the ending is a little ambiguous to me, like, because if the ship itself was haunted, right, just because you severed the main cabin from the gravity drive, the other half is still haunted.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you better get a Ghostbuster in it.
That's why it's like, is it just one spirit?
No,
two spirits?
Yeah, because remember they say the readings were all over the place.
Yeah,
all over the ship. So like, yeah, I think like, and the fact that not Peters, but Stark, when she has that vision, kind of similar to the one that Weir had at the very beginning, he like comes out of sleep, and Weir's there to meet her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
she's still having like dreams or whatever.
Right. So presumably, and this kind of goes back to Miller's narrative arc, he ends up sacrificing himself to save everyone. He's going to hell.
Yeah.
Him and Weir are going to hell, but he's doing that and all the pain that comes with it in order to save his team. And that's like his arc, because like he's atoning for what he feels he failed to do for the other crew member that he quote unquote abandoned.
Man, that also makes me think of, this spirit is like a fucking shapeshifter? because it was like, remember it came to Miller as like the burning victim, and then it shaped it, and then it switched into Weir's body. So I'm like, wait, is this a shapeshifter? Is a shapeshifter spirit? I don't know. That's just another. I don't know. I don't want to keep on bringing up questions to this movie. So let's just get into our scores.
All right, what you got? What you got?
Oh, man. This
low.
movie, I know that this movie has a cult following, but it wasn't that bad-ish. So let me just peel the Band-Aid out right off, and I'm just going to go ahead and give this my 2.5. All the extra stuff was very good. Like I said, the makeup, the set, the suits, really well done. Everything looks very good as far as that goes. But even though the premise of the story was good and it's kind of interesting, it just doesn't quite stick the landing as far as like having like the black hole be a dimension to hell. It just doesn't quite do enough for me. And I've already said it once and I'll say it again. Rewatchability plays a role, and I doubt I'll probably be turning this on again. So unfortunately, I'll have to give it a 2.5, which I still would recommend it if somebody's into like sci-fi movies. But I wouldn't say like this is one of the greatest sci-fi movies ever made, or any of them like the cast, like one of their top movies. I can't even say that, but 2.5 for Event Horizon for me.
Man, this is going to be another week where we agree 100%. I give it a 2.5. And you know, like I do have some issues with this movie, but I do love the concept. Yeah. I just thought the execution at times took me out of the movie. I would have liked to have gotten more grounded into the crew itself. I mean, that's one of the things, again, kind of comparing it to one of its influences. I think that you get that in Alien, right? Where, you know, it's similar to this movie, right? Where you see the whole crew around this table. They're all talking. They're all kind of going back and forth, bantering. You're understanding, okay, what's the purpose of our mission? And I think so. I think that there's things that I can clearly see some of its influences, but I didn't really get enough character development. Yeah. It is what it is. That was something that I found lacking. But you know, I also have to acknowledge that I think that this finished product, it doesn't feel like a finished product, and that's not because of Anderson. That's because of the situation Paramount put him and this film in. Because of other movies. And that sucks, because I think that even though this movie definitely has gained a revival over the years, I think a lot of people, you know, it's achieved that cult status for many people, and I think that there is things to be applauded about this movie, but I just think that because of Paramount kind of stepping in the way that it did, we got a diluted version of Anderson's vision.
Yeah, and like I said, and
I can't put that on him.
No, like the 130 cut, if that's what it was intended to be released, which is not like crazy long. That's only, like I said,
especially by today's standards.
No, hell no. And so maybe that could have hit a little bit more for me. But like maybe if it was Aliens, having that physical threat maybe would have played a little bit better for me personally. Like I said, I'm already not like a huge fan of like possession type movies. Like I'm not a huge fan of The Exorcist. I do not think it's the greatest movie ever, like some people think in like the horror department. And so like Event Horizon is just kind of lacking in both departments as far as like the outer space element, and then when you bring in like the possession of the ship or like the demonic presence, you're kind of like you're just uneasy on both footings with for me, and so that's why I would have to give it my 2.5, and you're agreeing with that 2.5 as well.
Yeah, man.
It's a great concept, but it's an entertaining movie. I would definitely be willing to like explore this concept if they did like a remake of it, or even if they released the 130 cut of it.
Well, they had the TV series.
But it just didn't stick it for me.
Well, you know, I think when we talk about like the legacy of this movie, part of the legacy sounds like they have been in conversation for a series, Event Horizon series. That's something that I've seen has kind of been in the conversation for at least a couple of years now. I want to say like I think 2019 is kind of when this idea surfaced. You know, between Paramount and Amazon Studios. But yeah, man, this definitely worth seeing. I think it's a good sci-fi horror movie. I wonder how much somebody like Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft kind of influenced Anderson when he was approaching this project, because, there's feels like at times like this element of like cosmic horror where there's this evil that's almost like beyond human being, like our ability to understand.
Yeah.
And it's completely indifferent to human suffering, as we can see. It's like child's play. They don't really. It's almost like it's an sorts of amusement, just like the gratuitous violence that it can make people commit on each other or manipulate them to commit on each other. So I'm curious to see if there's any like influence of that, because it definitely kind of gave me some of those vibes a little bit.
I keep thinking like how this movie could have been a little bit better for me, and I'm like, man, maybe especially if you did like a sequel to it, like maybe the first movie could be they're in outer space, everything goes, and then they end up going into the black hole where it go into the dimension, and they go into hell. Because it obviously shows you the ship can go there and it can come back.
Right.
So it's like maybe they go there, and then that's when all hell breaks loose and everything, and they have to find a way to get out. And then the sequel could be once they get out, some sort of the demonic presence that they've already kind of maybe gone into some sort of exposition. Like they're somehow going around and they're seeing weird fucking hieroglyphs on the walls or some shit.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like they come across a specific presence, and then that ends up following them onto the ship for the next one. I don't know. Like I said, the concept is good. It just didn't quite fully bake for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. Well, that said, I mean, that's our episode for today. Stick around. We're gonna be dropping an episode next week on. I'm trying to figure out what we're gonna do. You know what I'm saying? We got some good movies lined up, but stay tuned.
Yes, sir. Peace.